Lawyers. When did a rich parent try to control the divorce and end up losing themselves? I'm a divorce lawyer, and nothing prepares you for when your client's mother-in-law thinks she is the real client. It started with a handshake that didn't feel right. My client, Hannah, had just turned 30. Petite, polite, quiet, the kind of person you'd assume never raises her voice. She worked in interior design, freelanced, lived modestly. Her soon-to-be ex-husband, Lucas. Tech money, not old money, not lottery lucky, but rich enough to believe his money made him untouchable. And then there was her, Patricia Weston, Lucas's mother. She was already seated in the conference room when Hannah and I arrived for the first consult. Her Hermes scarf too perfect, her smile too tight. "You don't mind if I join, do you?" she asked, even though her coat was already on the chair. Hannah didn't even look up, just nodded once and sat down. I made a note of it. Control. Fear. I asked Hannah to speak freely about why she wanted the divorce. She hesitated. Patricia didn't. "She's having a moment, that's all, but we're handling it privately. We just need to ensure there's no scandal." I looked directly at Hannah. "You can talk to me, or we can reschedule privately." But Hannah shook her head. "It's fine." She started telling her story, slowly, carefully, like someone who had practiced the script 100 times but still expected punishment for each word. Turns out, Lucas had cheated. That alone isn't new. Happens all the time. But he hadn't just cheated. He'd flaunted it. Dinners, trips, a hotel account in his company's name. There was even an Instagram account, anonymous, curated like an art page, posting shots of the two of them together. Every photo filtered in black and white. Tasteful, almost cinematic. And worst of all, Patricia knew. She knew. And she called it Lucas's exploration phase, said it was normal for men with power to reset after turning 35. I told her it was temporary, Patricia interrupted, but she's still insisting on legal proceedings. Legal proceedings. As though her son's affair and Hannah's right to not be treated like furniture was a nuisance. I asked for financial disclosures. That's when Patricia really started squirming. Lucas and Hannah lived in a 3-story townhouse in Tribeca, which was technically in his name but purchased 6 months after the wedding. They had no prenup, but every bank account, car, and even the damn couch was registered to Weston Holdings, a trust set up by Patricia when Lucas was in college. "It's family property," she said. "Was it gifted?" I asked. "No, loaned." "Do you have contracts for those loans?" She blinked. "Excuse me? I need to know what was gifted to the marriage and what wasn't for court." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Sweetheart, we're not going to court. We'll settle this quietly with discretion. I'll draw up a generous agreement. I have lawyers." "So does Hannah," I said, my voice firm now. The temperature in the room dropped by 10 degrees. Hannah never said a word, just folded her hands and stared at the grain of the conference table. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about Lucas. This was Patricia's divorce, her empire, her optics. Over the next week, Patricia sent over her proposal. It was insulting. Hannah could keep her clothes, her car, which was leased in Lucas's name, and she'd receive a one-time payment of $75,000, contingent on signing a non-disclosure agreement about the affair and the Weston family. No alimony, no claim on the house, no further contact. The letter ended with, "We hope Hannah takes this opportunity to rebuild her life with dignity and grace." I showed it to Hannah. She stared at it for a full minute, then finally spoke. "She thinks she's the one getting divorced." I smiled. "She's not ready for what happens next." When we filed, we made 2 moves. Petitioned for half the marital assets, including the townhouse and the joint stocks Lucas had casually signed off on years ago. Filed a motion for spousal support based on lifestyle maintenance, which was significant. Suddenly, Patricia wasn't so calm. That's when she started doing what rich people do when they panic. Try to buy the narrative. She offered Hannah $250,000 in exchange for everything. The house, the investments, and silence. Hannah said no. Patricia then sent a private investigator to dig into Hannah's past. They found nothing, except a mother with early-stage Alzheimer's, whom Hannah visited every weekend. Patricia had the audacity to suggest we use that as leverage. She'll take the money to cover care costs. I've dealt with snakes. I've dealt with narcissists. But I had never seen someone treat empathy like a weakness to exploit. When we requested discovery on the Weston Holdings Trust to determine whether Lucas's income and assets had been funneled there during the marriage, Patricia lost it. She tried to get the motion dismissed. She called my office directly. She threatened to ruin Hannah if this went public. And then she did something reckless. She offered me a retainer. Privately, off the record. $50,000 to end the proceedings without humiliation. Said I could still represent Hannah, just with guidance. I reported her immediately. That's when she knew this was war. And the best part? She started playing dirty, in a system where dirty often leaves fingerprints. Patricia thought she was bulletproof. The Weston family had money, real estate, connections, a legal team on retainer since the 90s. But what Patricia failed to grasp, and what so many like her never see coming, is that power only protects you until someone like Hannah stops being scared of it. And Hannah had just stopped being scared. Patricia's first move after my refusal to be bought was bold and stupid. She filed a motion to intervene in the divorce proceedings, claimed she was a third party with vested financial interests, based on the Weston Holdings Trust that owned the townhouse and several marital assets. She was essentially arguing that she should be treated as a plaintiff. The judge denied it within 20 minutes, but the damage was done to her reputation. Because when you try to insert yourself into your son's divorce by dragging your trust into court records, you expose the very asset shield you built to avoid scrutiny. And scrutiny came fast. My team pulled up property records. We found 5 properties under Weston Holdings, all purchased within 10 years, 3 of them after Lucas's wedding. And Patricia had made one fatal mistake. She had listed Lucas as the managing member of the holding company on the incorporation documents filed with the state. In legal terms, that made the trust part of his assets for the purpose of divorce discovery. Patricia started unraveling from there. She sent a new settlement offer, $600,000, full waiver of any asset claims, plus payment of Hannah's mother's medical bills for a year. But again, only if Hannah signed an NDA. This one included a clause that said she'd never discuss the personal habits of Lucas or the Weston family in any medium, public or private. We laughed. Then we filed a counter motion. At that point, Lucas, who had remained conveniently silent while Mommy did the dirty work, finally showed his face. His lawyer requested a private meeting. Lucas looked thinner than I expected, sleepless, hands shaking a little. "Look," he said, "I didn't want it to go like this. My mom she's intense. She's malicious," I corrected, "and you're letting her run your divorce." He leaned forward. "What would it take to end this quietly?" Hannah was silent, then said, "Tell the truth." He blinked. "About what?" "About the money. About the apartment. About everything you let her do." Lucas hesitated, then left. 3 days later, we received a document dump. Emails, bank records, even notes from Patricia to Lucas. Handwritten, scanned. One of them said, "Keep her quiet. The townhouse is not worth risking the IPO timing. Draft the NDA yourself if you have to. Use her mother if needed. Emotional leverage works best when they still feel guilty." That letter was gold. We submitted it as evidence in our amended filing. The reaction? Patricia's legal team tried to say it was inadmissible due to attorney-client privilege, until we proved the letter was written from mother to son, not to his counsel. It was personal, manipulative, and devastating. Within 48 hours, Lucas's legal team changed strategy. They withdrew all family offers and began cooperating with ours. But Patricia wasn't done. She started showing up to Hannah's freelance clients, subtly, elegantly, suggesting, "Maybe it's best you find someone else just until the case settles." She didn't threaten anyone directly. She didn't have to. She was Patricia Weston. She implied, and people obeyed, until one client recorded her, a boutique furniture gallery owner in Soho, savvy and sharp. She wore glasses with red rims and had no time for drama. When Patricia showed up dripping in pearls and suggestions, this woman hit record on her phone. Then she sent it to me. In the recording, Patricia said, "I understand she's talented, but this divorce is bringing unfortunate attention. You might want to pause collaborations. These things affect reputation. You know how press works." We filed for a protective order the next morning. Harassment, business interference, retaliation. Now the judge was paying attention. By week's end, the court imposed a temporary restraining order against Patricia, not from Hannah, but from involvement in any business or legal matter related to the divorce proceedings. The press caught wind. The New York Post ran a headline. "Manhattan matriarch slapped with restraining order in son's bitter divorce." Patricia went ballistic. She released a statement to the media saying she was a mother protecting her family's integrity and accused Hannah of being a calculated gold digger who used affection to access a legacy. I don't usually get emotional in cases, but I watched Hannah read that headline on her cracked phone. Sitting in a coat 2 winters old, sipping coffee she clearly hadn't wanted to afford that morning. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She just said, "This is what she does when she thinks no one's watching." Now they're watching. Lucas didn't want it. Hannah didn't want it. Even I didn't want it. Because trials in high-asset divorces are messy, unpredictable, and expensive. But Patricia? Patricia thrived on control. And the moment she couldn't buy or bully it, she escalated. So yes, we went to trial. It was supposed to last 3 days. It lasted 9. And from the first hour of testimony, it was clear this wasn't just about marriage anymore. It was about legacy, about image, about a woman who had built a dynasty of mirrors and couldn't stand seeing a crack. Lucas was called first. He was nervous but calm. His lawyer had clearly coached him. The goal was simple: minimize damage, agree to fair terms, walk away with dignity. But I didn't care about his dignity. I cared about Hannah. I began my cross. "Lucas, is it true your mother, Patricia Weston, manages Weston Holdings?" "Yes." "And is it also true that you are listed as managing member on incorporation documents?" A pause. "I was. Still are. Documents haven't changed. So for legal purposes, the holdings belong to you." He nodded once. "And do you recall when the townhouse was purchased?" 6 months after we married." "And how was it paid for?" "Through Weston Holdings." "Was that a loan?" "No." "A gift?" Silence. "Lucas?" "It was a family investment. That benefited your marriage." He sighed. "Yes. Thank you. One more thing. Did your mother instruct you to have your wife sign an NDA regarding your affair?" Yes." "Did she offer financial incentives in exchange for that silence?" "Yes." "Did she imply that Hannah's mother's medical care could be used as leverage?" He lowered his head. "Yes." "Was your mother aware of how damaging that suggestion could be?" "Yes." No further questions. The courtroom didn't gasp. This wasn't TV. But I watched Patricia, front row in a black suit, dig her nails so deep into her handbag strap that the leather bent. Next came Hannah. She was steady, director, unemotional but not cold. I asked her to describe the marriage. She did, in clear, unfussy terms. Lucas's absence, his condescension, the endless presence of Patricia, who came by the house unannounced, rearranged furniture, and once fired their housekeeper without telling Hannah. She believed the house was hers, Hannah said softly, that I was just renting space. I let that sit in the air. Then I showed the judge a photo, a screenshot of Patricia's text to Lucas. "Tell her the painting above the fireplace has to go. I don't care if she chose it. It's offensive to the family aesthetic." The judge raised an eyebrow. Then I showed the scanned letter from Patricia. "Keep her quiet. The townhouse is not worth risking the IPO timing." Patricia's attorney objected. The judge overruled it. It was in the record already. And with every word, the facade cracked. But the real break came on day 5. Patricia was called to the stand. And that, I'll admit, I didn't expect. Her legal team tried to fight it, said she wasn't a relevant party anymore. But the harassment order changed that. She took the stand in a $3,000 dress and heels so sharp they could cut glass. My co-counsel handled the first part. Calm, respectful. Then I stepped up. "Mrs. Weston, are you familiar with the term marital interference?" Objection. "Goes to pattern of behavior, Your Honor." Overruled. Proceed. "Mrs. Weston, I am familiar with the term," she said through gritted teeth. "Have you ever attempted to influence the business relationships of your son's spouse?" "No." "We have a recording where you suggest a client pause collaboration with Hannah. Are you denying that's your voice?" "It was a concern, a friendly warning." "To whom?" "A gallery owner. Reputation matters in design." "And whose reputation were you protecting?" She looked directly at me. "My son's?" "And in doing so, did you ever consider the legal consequences of trying to sabotage your daughter-in-law's career?" "She was never family." Silence. "Could you repeat that, Mrs. Weston?" "She was never family." The judge scribbled something. I don't know what, but Patricia knew, at that exact second, she'd gone too far. Later that afternoon, I saw the opposing counsel in the hallway on the phone, pacing. By day 7, Patricia's lawyers filed a motion to separate her testimony from Lucas's case. Essentially, she was trying to legally distance herself from the fallout. The judge denied it. Too late. Then came the financial disclosures. Turns out, Patricia had been funneling money from Weston Holdings into personal accounts overseas. Tax shelters, vacation properties, even a wellness retreat in Geneva that was bleeding money, and had Lucas listed as a board member. Lucas claimed he never knew. We believed him. Because now, he wanted to take his mother down too. It had turned. The divorce wasn't just Hannah versus Lucas anymore. It was Lucas and Hannah versus Patricia. By week 3 of trial, Patricia was no longer sitting front row. She was absent. Her legal team said she had fallen ill from the stress, but we knew the truth. She'd lost control of the narrative, and rich people don't like showing up without armor. Lucas, on the other hand, was showing up every day. Early. Alone. He'd stopped wearing suits. Just a plain sweater and slacks. You could tell something had cracked open in him. Not just guilt, but shame. Not the performance kind, the real kind. The kind that sits in the pit of your stomach when you realize your silence made you an accomplice. And then, on day 12, Lucas requested to meet Hannah outside the courtroom. No lawyers. She agreed. They spoke in the hallway. No raised voices. Just two people who had once loved each other trying to remember if any of it had been real. 10 minutes later, Lucas approached me. "I want to make her an offer," he said. "A real one. No strings. No NDA. Just fairness." I didn't say anything. Just waited. He pulled a paper from his pocket. Handwritten. His lawyer hadn't seen it. It was his alone. He was offering half the townhouse value to be paid via direct buyout or sale. Hannah's choice. 5% of his equity in the upcoming IPO. Payment for her mother's care indefinitely, under her name. No family-controlled trusts. A public statement acknowledging the affair and clearing her of all blame. "And Patricia?" I asked. "I don't care what happens to her anymore." It wasn't enough for justice, but it was a damn good start. I showed it to Hannah. She read it in silence, lips pressed together, then said the most Hannah thing imaginable. "I don't want his guilt. I want my freedom." But she accepted, with one condition, that the statement go out before any signatures were made. That same evening, Lucas posted on his verified company account, "In the interest of transparency, I failed my marriage. I cheated. I let my family interfere. I allowed someone I loved to be humiliated for the sake of silence and reputation. Hannah never deserved that. She is not a gold digger. She is not a liar. She is stronger than any of us. I will carry the weight of my mistakes without excuse." It went viral, not just because it was raw, but because it shattered the image of the perfect son Patricia had spent her life curating. Comments flooded in. Investors were rattled. One board member stepped down within a day. Turns out Patricia had tried to court him for a shady land deal years ago, and now it was under scrutiny. Suddenly, the Westons were in free fall. And Patricia? She resurfaced with fury. Her legal team filed an emergency motion for injunctive relief, claiming the statement had defamed her by implicating her in misconduct. It was a laughable stretch, especially since Lucas hadn't mentioned her by name. The judge denied the motion. Then we filed ours. A request to open a separate investigation into Weston Holdings, citing suspected misuse of marital assets, tax evasion, and financial coercion. It triggered a formal review by the court-appointed forensic accountant. And guess what we found? A series of consulting payments made to Patricia from a shell company Lucas had no knowledge of, set up in the Cayman Islands. The total? $1.9 million. All post-wedding, all unexplained. We flagged it. IRS got wind. Now it wasn't just about a nasty divorce. It was about potential fraud. Patricia was facing scrutiny from the feds, and for the first time in the entire ordeal, her attorneys looked scared. Because while lawyers can handle ugly, they can't protect a client from handcuffs. The final blow came when the judge ordered Patricia to submit to a deposition under oath regarding the finances of Weston Holdings. Her team tried to delay it. She tried to claim a medical exemption, but the court smelled blood. The judge gave her 72 hours to appear or face contempt. She showed no makeup, no pearls, no scarf. Just a woman whose entire world was finally reflecting back the truth she'd spent a lifetime avoiding. She tried to bluff through it, claimed she didn't recall setting up the offshore accounts, blamed advisors, suggested Hannah had manipulated Lucas into turning against his own mother. But Hannah wasn't in the room, only the numbers were, and the numbers told a different story. By this point, Lucas had already signed the settlement agreement. Hannah received the buyout. Her mother's care was guaranteed. The townhouse was listed and the profits split. But the judge hadn't yet ruled on one thing: damages from the harassment, interference, and reputational harm Patricia had caused. We submitted our final claim, $750,000 in punitive damages, not for the money, but the message. Patricia tried to settle privately. We said no. The judge reviewed the recordings, letters, client statements, and financial schemes. Then, on the final day of proceedings, she made her ruling. This court finds that Mrs. Patricia Weston, though not a named party in the initial divorce filing, acted repeatedly to interfere with lawful proceedings, manipulate financial disclosures, and intimidate one of the involved parties. In doing so, she crossed the line from influence to abuse of process. The court awards the petitioner $850,000 in damages. This will not be sealed. It will be public record. Boom. The ruling hit Patricia like a freight train. For the first time in her life, money didn't make the mess go away. It just made the mess louder. Her name was in headlines again, this time not as a benefactor or art collector, but as a legal liability. Judge orders Patricia Weston to pay $850,000 in divorce harassment ruling. Weston Holdings under federal review after courtroom bombshells. Matriarch no more, Patricia Weston's empire cracks. She tried to spin it, issued a statement through a PR firm, claimed she was blindsided by unfounded accusations and that she'd only ever tried to support her son during a difficult transition. But public sympathy didn't come. Not this time. Because now people weren't looking at her as a tragic high society mother. They were seeing the footage, the documents, the receipts. Social media didn't forget the voice recording of her threatening Hannah's career, or the scanned note where she instructed Lucas to use her mother for leverage. And what's worse, corporate America noticed. Weston Holdings lost two major investment partners. A real estate firm pulled out of a $30 million development deal. One luxury furniture company, one of Hannah's former clients, released a statement praising her courage and cutting all future dealings with Weston-affiliated businesses. By the time the IRS sent a formal inquiry into offshore accounts, Patricia had fired her legal team. She brought in a crisis management firm and tried to pause the Geneva Wellness Retreat's operations. But the board of Weston Holdings, a board she had handpicked over 2 decades, saw what was coming. They voted to remove her from all executive duties. Lucas abstained from the vote. He didn't need revenge. He had closure. I later found out he left New York 3 weeks after the ruling, sold his share of the townhouse to Hannah, moved to Oregon, said he was going to spend a year doing things that don't require signal. And Hannah? She didn't gloat. She didn't give interviews. She didn't post celebratory selfies or clapbacks. She just went quiet. I saw her one last time, in a quiet coffee shop on the Lower East Side. She was alone, working on a design portfolio. I waved. She smiled. That was it. But there was a piece in her I hadn't seen before, like someone who'd spent years drowning in other people's expectations and had finally come up for air. And Patricia? Patricia did what rich people always try to do after a fall. She sued. Not Lucas. Not the board. Not the IRS. She sued me. Claimed defamation, professional misconduct, and collusion with opposing counsel. Said I had used media manipulation and courtroom theater to undermine her integrity. Her filing was a disaster. No facts. No grounds. Just rage on legal letterhead. My firm laughed. But we responded. Officially. Publicly. With every document we had on file. All redacted, all by the book. It was a reminder that her world was no longer protected by private handshakes and silent settlements. The case was thrown out in less than a month. And the final twist? The IRS froze several of Patricia's accounts pending investigation. One of them was a Swiss bank account connected to a series of donations she'd funneled through shell companies in the Cayman Islands. That account? It was listed under Lucas's name. Forged, of course, but still legally dangerous. Patricia tried to claim clerical error. The signature didn't match. The dates didn't add up. Didn't matter. The DOJ started sniffing around. I won't speculate on what came next. I don't need to. All I know is that Weston Holdings quietly settled multiple government inquiries for an undisclosed amount 6 months later. And Patricia? She disappeared. No interviews. No gala appearances. No society pages. Just gone. Some say she moved to Europe. Others say she lives quietly in a private estate upstate under a different name. I don't care. Because in the end, she didn't just lose the case. She lost her son. She lost her power. She lost the version of herself that could get away with anything. And Hannah? She kept the townhouse. She renovated the place top to bottom. Modern, clean, warm. Her mother lives with her now. The top floor is a design studio. A startup called Midline, focused on interior spaces for elder care homes. Simple, elegant, ethical. She never mentioned the past again. Didn't have to. Because when you win with truth, real, messy, complicated truth, you don't need to scream. You just keep walking. I thought the story ended there. Honestly, most of them do. In paperwork and wire transfers, in bitter silences and slow healing. But a year later, Almost to the day, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address, just my name and firm printed in perfect block letters. Inside was a single page, thick cream paper. The ink was dark blue. No greeting, no closing. Just this. You won. But you were never supposed to. I was taught that money fixes everything. Not because it should, but because it can. I don't remember the first time I believed that. But I remember the first time I knew it stopped working. The moment you looked me in the eye and didn't flinch. I have always despised people who play fair. But now I understand why they sleep better. Tell her I still don't forgive her. But I envy her. P. No signature. No legal threat. No check enclosed. Just a truth too late. I never told Hannah. I kept the letter in a drawer for a while, then shredded it. Because that wasn't an apology. It was a eulogy for control. The final whisper of a woman who built her life like a chessboard and couldn't accept that the queen can fall too. But the world kept spinning. Hannah's business grew. I started seeing her name in online design magazines. Never as a subject of scandal, always as a feature. Midline partnered with a nonprofit for dementia-friendly design. One of their prototype homes won an architecture. I clipped the article and pinned it in my office. Still have it. One day, I got a call from a former colleague. She said, "You remember the Weston case? My cousin just got a job working with Hannah. Says she's the kindest boss she's ever had. Pays above market. Gives her team Fridays off. Her mother sits in the studio and folds fabric swatches." That's how I like to think of Hannah now. Not as a victim or even as a survivor, but as someone who made something out of the wreckage, quietly, fiercely, and on her own terms. And Lucas? We never spoke again, but someone once sent me a blog post, a rambling, heartfelt piece from a man who described himself as recovering from inherited silence. He didn't name names, but the timeline and details were unmistakable. He talked about being raised to believe love was conditional, that mistakes should be buried, and that women were meant to be either trophies or threats. He ended the post with this: "If you're reading this and wondering if it's too late to be someone else, it's not. But don't expect applause when you change. Just hope they leave the door unlocked." No one clapped. No one needed to. Sometimes the lesson isn't how to win. It's what it costs when you try to win the wrong way. Epilogue. Every so often, I still get questions about the case. Law students ask about strategy. Journalists try to pry for off-the-record details. People want to know what Patricia's fatal mistake was. It wasn't the offshore accounts. It wasn't the forged paperwork. It wasn't even the recordings or the threats. It was assuming the legal system would protect her just because she had the most money in the room. But justice, when it works, doesn't care about your trust fund. It listens to patterns. It respects paper trails. It watches how you treat the person with less power. And in that courtroom, power shifted. Not all at once. Not loudly, but undeniably, because Hannah never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Patricia lost herself trying to control someone else's ending, and found, too late, that the only story she could write anymore was her own downfall. I've seen a lot of divorces, but this one stuck with me, because sometimes the biggest plot twist is when decency wins, and no amount of money can reverse that.